ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Common Sense Africa podcast. Today is a very exciting day. We have a wonderful personality, a woman of substance, an African woman that makes Africa very proud, somebody that I've known for years, somebody that is doing very good things in Africa. Talking about the Honorable Macdella Cooper, the founder of Macdella Cooper Foundation, a philanthropist par excellence. And she's built schools, she's supported orphanages across Africa, especially in her native Liberia. And she was also a presidential candidate. As a matter of fact, the only female candidate in the last presidential election in Liberia. Macdella Cooper, welcome to Common Sense Africa podcast.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Great, great. So today we're going to have you just share with our audience, as what are those impediments? Talk about the women involvement in politics in Africa. How have you been able to overcome all those difficulties, impediments that make it hard for women to participate in politics in Africa? Just share with us how you've been able to succeed.
Well, thank you for that question, Ugo. When you look back at the history of Africa, from the early days of kingdoms to the days of liberation movements, women have been a strong participant with the different forces that were aligned to bring Africa's civilization into what we are today. It's just I guess there was a bit of a shortcoming or divide during the time of the arrival of the merchant ships that took so many Africans or children of Africa to other parts of the world. And then there was sort of a glitch in our culture. And when you fast forward today, we have national constitutions that were written in the 50s when African nations were being declared independent. The crafters of those constitutions forgot the women's roles and rights. And so a lot of nations' constitutions omitted involvement or participation and representation of women. Right. And so we're living by those constitutional rules today. But from history, when you know your African history, you know that there were women who made major decisions. They had their seats at the decision-making tables. And today, after independence or declaration of independence, we see there's a shift. Right. And for someone like me, who is a spiritual person, person who is a lover of history, I know the role women play. Of course. It's significant roles women play with kings, going all the way down to chief and chiefdoms. Right. A chief never made a decision without going to lay next to his wife and get her opinion. And so having that sort of history in my veins, running through the blood that runs through my veins, I know my place in Africa. I know my place, my rights. Right. And although these modern day constitutions will omit women, I don't feel omitted. I don't feel that I'm any less of a citizen of any of these, or I have the right to participate. So I guess you call me one of those people who is reincarnated from maybe some past, woman from African history. But I feel that although these modern days constitution does not give us the right to participate or doesn't even recognize us, like for example in Liberia, the Liberian constitution always referred to the citizen as he shall this, he shall that, he shall. Even during the time when I was applying to run for office, the application says, where does your wife and children reside? This was on a domicile application. Right. And just to show that, Western ideas came in and Western ideas, omitted the rights of African women. But African women have always been part of the decision-making of Africa. Right. And so who do we blame for this? But right now is not the time to take the blame. But my advocacy work really fights for the rights of women and young girls to have education and women to have the resources they need to live a better existence and take care of themselves and their family. So the obstacles within the electoral process of most African countries is that women are oftentimes not given the rights to be on a political party ticket. Right. So those are some of the things we're struggling with. We in Liberia, we started to fight for 30% quota to give women the rights. Every political party shall make sure or endeavor to ensure. That's why one political party one law 5.4.5b of our election law says political parties shall endeavor to ensure. But we fought to remove the word endeavor because endeavor means you should try to. So we asked to to omit the word endeavor and just say political parties shall ensure that women, 30% women are represented on each political party ticket. So anyway, I don't want to dwell too long, but those are some of the obstacles we're fighting. We're trying to change these laws that came in after colonialism, after this so-called Declaration of Independence, when we're asking colonial powers to leave our land, and we were taking charge. We sort of look at those colonial nations' constitutions, and we copy a lot of them. And so those laws, those constitutions were mirroring the European and the Western world.
Right.
It was never part of African history.
As a matter of fact, it's interesting that you mentioned that because great revolutions in Africa have been led by women. I know, like in Nigeria, for instance, the fight against the colonialists started from the Aba market women, and then we've had great war generals like the Queen Amina, and a whole lot of them. So I don't know how, and we Africa missed that, and then to adopt the foreign tradition of women got to take the back burner. It's never been like an African tradition. So it's mainly, foreign culture, one of those things, and that's again that's why we here at Common Sense Africa we have to trace back to our roots and begin to do things the right way. So coming back to you again, so your story is quite interesting because you were once a child refugee, So you left Liberia at a very young age as a refugee when the war was there, and you came to America. Well, after going to other places, then you found your way to America to join your family here. And after experiencing the comforts, of America, because you're quite successful in America, what made you to go back to Liberia to begin to, because it's interesting, it's not every time that you see people that have experienced so much, comfort, and then you go back then to start to help to rebuild. So is remarkable, and again, I must thank you for what you do. Please, give us a little bit of insight of those things that move you, the reason that you decided to go back to Liberia, to go to Africa, because I noticed you not only operate in Liberia, you operate across Africa, empowering women, empowering the girl child, and all that stuff. So just tell us more about it, because I want to know, I'm interested in learning, what moves you, where do you get your energy, what is it? So please talk to us.
Thank you. I'm a child, a daughter of the dust of Africa, and it was an unfortunate situation that made me leave Africa. And I'm forever grateful to the United States of America as well as other countries that took me in. But the United States, opened their doors to me during the darkest days of my life. There was a major civil war in my country. My father was killed. My mother was, she fled for her own safety. And I found myself lost in a war as a war orphan. I migrated to Ivory Coast, which is the bordering country from the eastern side of the country. We went into the refugee camp where we were lost, my two brothers and I. My oldest brother was barely 16 years of age. And we were just trying to stay away from trouble because a lot of young people our age were being recruited, that boys were being used to fight and the girls were being used as sex slaves. And so we were grateful to God that we were, first of all, I wasn't raped. I left the war with a lot of emotional scars, no physical scars, but a lot of emotional scars because of things I saw, which no child should ever see. When I got to the Ivory Coast, we got reconnected with my mother, and my mother started the process of immigration, and finally, after 2.5 years, got a visa to come to the United States. I arrived in Newark, New Jersey, went to Bell Ranger High School, and when I came to the United States, I knew one thing for sure. This was the land of opportunities. Right. And I was an African child, African, refugee, just temporarily here. And so I knew this was never going to be my home. I was going to better off myself, seek as much opportunity as I can to make something of myself and return to Africa. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I did. I came here as a dirt poor refugee. I saw the America that I wanted to be a part of, and I could only access that America through education. And since I was so poor living in the ghettos of Newark, New Jersey in 1993, Newark was the number 3 city in the country with the highest crime rate. And so I had to navigate through that and also try to gain some level of success. I graduated number 3 in my high school. In my senior class, I graduated number 3 with the highest grades. I was granted a full academic scholarship to go to any college in the state of New Jersey of my choice. And so I went to the College of New Jersey, and at that university, I was most of the time I was the only black person in my groups. It was a predominantly white college, right. And so I knew I had to graduate. I had no option to fail. Right. I was the second year of college. I remember I was very depressed in a way because everything was finally hitting me. The experience I had gone through during the war, the hardship, the things that I had no answers for, things I saw that should not have been, experienced, just seeing people dead, people abandoning their children, their old people. Those things really haunted me after years. And so being at the university, I knew I had no option but to succeed. So success was on my mind. I graduated college, I was recruited and went to work in corporate America, made lots of money. I was very comfortable in New York, made lots of very good friends in high places. But my mind was still focused on Africa. And those young people who were my age that did not have the same luck that I had. And so I started to find opportunities for them. I started the Macdella Cooper Foundation to channel resources to Liberia specifically, which, like you said, sort of went across the continent because today I'm in so many different countries. So that's what drove me. The idea that a young refugee, female refugee, black woman, can live in the ghettos of Newark, New Jersey, but through hard work and sort of, ambition, you can become something. That was my inspiration. And so the moment I started to really make enough resources, I decided to start this foundation, channel resources, and then eventually move to Africa to give back in ways that I knew will also help the continent and help the young people. And so that's what I did. I moved to Liberia. My presence there was great. My presence on the continent was great. I motivated a lot of young people to say, look, if I can do it, you can do it as well. There's no reason why you should let the burdens of life hold you down. And so I think that was my calling in life, to just encourage people to be more than what the limitations of the mind would tell them.
It's interesting. Well, you are one heck of a special person, So because your experience, your war experience, your refugee experience, especially at the tender age that you experienced it. Well, I've seen some other people that went through the war, the horrible, experience of war, being a child refugee and all that stuff. And that experience only made them to stay far, far away from Africa. The moment they experience the comfort of the West, especially in America, they never want to go back to Africa again. They didn't want anything, that traumatic experience. It damaged them for life. So I'm glad it didn't damage you. Instead, it actually brought out something positive that you're not going back to help them, to help in Africa. So that is remarkable. So I applaud you. I really thank you for what you're doing. And I hope all those other people that have, even if you didn't experience the war, but see the need to help. So I'm happy to be talking to you about that, and I hope a lot of other people will emulate from what you're doing. So on that note, from your experience as having participated in an election in Liberia and seeing Africa and how all countries in Africa are doing, do you think we are making progress with the participation of women in Africa, in African politics? I know Liberia produced a female president, I think Tanzania is the other country now in Africa that has female. Ethiopia, does Ethiopia have now Malawi? Oh yeah, Malawi as well. Yeah, Banda, right? Yeah. So are we making? Do you think we're making progress with women?
Well, that's a that's a wonderful question. In some sense, we're making progress, and in other ways, we're not making progress as quickly or fast as we need to. I don't, I think it's great that we just named a few countries: Liberia, Malawi, Tanzania. Ethiopia, Tanzania. By default, well, when I said by default, the president passed away and she took over. Yeah. Correct. And so we can do better, because I fully believe that women has a lot to bring to the table when it comes to Africa and when it comes to decision making. It's one thing that really stared me up when I see a bunch of men sitting around a table making national decisions without the representation of women and the young people, or even those with different abilities. I think it is time that everyone sits at a decision-making table to make decisions on a national level. I don't think we should copy the Western ideas that old white men are the only ones who are capable of making decisions for the world. I don't know of any religious book or any spiritual book that says white men were the gods. When God left the earth, he left them in charge. Right. And at the same time, I don't like to see black men sitting around the table making decisions without black women.
Especially black old men.
Exactly so. And so I think we need to get rid of the mistakes of the past and start a new path. That's the only way we can actually create some balance in Africa. When men are sitting around a table talking about things in terms of economics, they're talking about infrastructure development. They're talking about things that matters to them. Women come to the table thinking about the families. Women are thinking about the schools that the children will go to, the food security. They think about safety on the road. You guys build roads for your fast cars, but we think about the family in the car, right? So we would need policies around road safety, right? So you don't have drunk drivers. Women come to the table with different things that benefit more people than what men come to the table with. And it's not an insult. It's not where women trying to take over the world or women want to take over Africa. But the omission of women at the decision-making table hurts Africa. It's almost like Africa can walk on two legs, but decided we're going to leave one leg behind and just keep hopping. That's right. So we do need inclusion for all people, not just women. Because I'm a woman, but I will never fully understand what a young man needs are. That's right. So we need to have those young men, those young women, the elderly, the men, and the women on a decision-making table. So that's what we fight for. Right. And so when women talk about equal participation, representation, so that we can have access to the resources. Right. Because when women are not on the decision-making table, men are making the laws, the rules and regulations. There's no one talking about how much resources will go to maternal health, the hospitals, the schoolhouses. Those important matters get forgotten about. They're not funded. But women on the table will demand that the school gets funded, the hospitals, the market houses. There's a road from farm to market, so the women who sell those vegetables can have easy access getting their crops from the farm to the market. So you see, the holistic view of a woman on the table is very important. And so we are fighting to get women on political party tickets. Because if you imagine you go to a ballot box and you just have a bunch of men, you're going to vote for a bunch of men. Of course. But if you compel political parties, these big parties, to include women on the ballot, and not just any women or woman, but a qualified woman. It's not just let's check the box, as most Western organizations go into Africa. Oh yeah, we give some money to this school, check. They don't care about the quality of the education the children are obtaining, because that's poor African children. But me as an African woman, I don't only just give money to schools, I make sure the education is quality education. The environment is conducive for those children, right? So we look at things from a different perspective. So we need to fight and get together on the continent to make sure our governments are putting in the right laws and policies and regulations so that political parties are compelled to have women on their ballots, or when they're submitting their list of candidates, women should be on there, at least 30%. So that's, in terms of the progress Africa is making, we can do a lot more. Rwanda is doing a great job. We have up to 63% female representation in parliament.
Really? I didn't know it was that.
Oh, it's very high. Paul Kagame did a wonderful job in compelling political parties to put women on the ballot.
Good. So, thank you, Lisa. I didn't know Rwanda, has that high
highest in the
participation of
world.
women.
In
Really?
the whole world.
It
Rwanda
has to be.
the
It
highest
has to
number
be.
of women in parliament.
So, another thing I noticed that in Africa, history, especially African history,
Correct.
is not taught in most schools in Africa. They don't talk about African history most of the time, but instead they talk about European history, how Christopher Colombo, Mungo Park, or whoever discovered Africa,
That's
meanwhile
right.
the Africans were there. So do you think if Africans, maybe whether it's through the AU or whatever, make sure that standard African traditions or history is taught in African schools to include, like we mentioned, all those great women, what they've done and all that, so that Africans or the younger generations of Africans will know that yes, women must be included in the decision making. Women can do whatever it is, the men. And it's amazing that I was reading, I think there was a book I was reading about Africa, true African culture and all those things. Like people talk about polygamy, for instance. So, but they keep leaving one part out, which is before a man has one wife already wants to take a second wife or another wife, he has to first of all seek the approval of the first wife or the wife that he had before. And it's only when she approves it that the man goes ahead and marries. So it's that is why the man doesn't just get out and just make these decisions, he consults the woman. So, and this day and age whereby uh, some people think that a woman in Africa is only restricted to the kitchen or to the other room or whatever they call it. So it's not African culture, you know. So African culture has a very prominent place for the woman, and I think we should go back, to that, and that's one of the things that Common Sense Africa podcast and blog, has come to really take care of, because we have to get back to our way of doing things, and I think that's the only way we will make an inroad in Africa. So, from your experience also, as having participated or still participating in elections in Africa, uh, and I wanted to look at because from my experience, I've seen that it's like African countries, though we have AU, and then you have the sub-regional organizations like the ECOWAS and the other ones. But it looks like instead of bringing Africa together, they are drifting, further and further apart. So, what is your experience, and how do you think we can mitigate that? How do you think we can solve that problem? Problem of getting Africa more connected, working together, because it bothers me that in this day and age, uh, Africa doesn't operate under one single currency, doesn't have one, monetary, policy and all that. It is a shame, that uh, like you're traveling from Liberia to Guinea, next door to Liberia, the first thing you're gonna do is to look for where you're gonna get buy dollars, with your Liberian dollars, So when you buy dollars, now you travel to Guinea by road. Even you're just crossing the border, So when you get to Guinea, you're now using your the US dollars to buy safer, you know. So it is, and at every point you're losing money, you know. So it is. We need to really. It's very important to me, and that will actually bring serious progress. That would, people Africans will save money. It will give value to the single currency if Africa decides to have one, and people will no longer be losing money, buying foreign currency. So, what is your take?
Well, let me go to the first question you asked about the education system. Um, the education system should be inclusive of Africa history. I mentioned today I was speaking at the Essex County College, and I mentioned that during my early years I didn't learn about slavery. It was talked about, but instead of a passing conversation, you passed and you heard it. We didn't know much about the number of Africans that were taking to work in free labor across the world to build other people's nations, and they didn't get paid for it. And those countries, benefited, but Africa never did.
Right.
And when I came to the United States, when I went to high school, was when I actually learned about this horrible incident that happened in the world's history, where our people were taken out of the continent and forced into these labor camps or whatever, plantations, and that really caused me to start having visions, and not visions in a way, I would say just as my consciousness started to sort of became aware of this horrible thing that happened, and I thought I need to research this more, and that's when I started learning about Marcus Garvey and Kwame Nkrumah and the contribution that they made towards the redevelopment of the Africans across the world. The UNIA, which was the organization Marcus Garvey started, just to give blacks the pride, sort of like a place, feel like they're part of this world and they're people, and no one should ever treat them like that again. Learning all of this history really led me into doing what I did. But prior to coming to the United States, I didn't know. I had no idea. So we, the Africans, we come to the United States, we see Black Americans in their struggle, and we don't understand what they have gone through. And we just think, oh, why are they complaining? This is a land of milk and honey. But we don't know the horrible conditions that it went through that has, tormented them all these years. And there was no apology from any nation. There was no reparation given to them. They just had, and even today, laws and still don't support the African American communities. And so it's an eye opener. So going back to Africa, this is something that has to be included in our education. The young people growing up have to know this. Otherwise, you have a divided Black community, the Africans thinking, oh, why these African Americans are like this? And the African Americans thinking, well, you guys were the one our parents kept and treated us or gave us away for free. And so there is this conversation that needs to be had. We, the children of Africa, have to extend a hand of apology to bring our brothers and sisters home, to make them feel part of this whole Africa. And I believe that since Liberia was the land created for free Black men and women, post the abolition of slavery, Liberia should do something to give, Black Americans some level of citizenship. I think it would help Africa. I think our brothers and sisters across the world can help us negotiate. Right. Because I, as a politician, I see some of my colleagues from the Senate to House of Representatives, they cannot negotiate. I see African ministers who don't have the confidence in front of a Western negotiator. They don't have the confidence. Right. And so we need to bring everyone together. Things like the UNIA, where Marcus Garvey was trying to do back in the days. Those are great things. Where Kwame Nkrumah and all these other leaders who try to unify the Black world, right. Not against anyone, right. But unify the Black world for the Black world. Right. And I don't think anyone of any race or nationality should take offense to that. Right. It's just to give people a better human existence. Right. But people get offended when they see Black people uniting. Right. Oh, no, Black people don't want to take over no one's land, no one's property. We just want to see our continent be well, our people be well. Right. And so I think our education system should incorporate, it's just as we do learn about the Holocaust, right. Our children should learn about slavery.
Exactly, especially in Africa.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's amazing that you mentioned it. I went to school, up to like first degree in Nigeria. Did not learn much about slavery in schools in Nigeria, and it was only when I came, most of the things that I learned about slavery, I learned when I came to America. So it's amazing that you talked about the disconnect, and it's on purpose,
Absolutely.
So I think the Western curriculum that was left purposely left it that way. So that way they'll keep you disconnected, so that the African Americans don't understand, that you don't know these things, but the Africans, are accusing the African Americans why they are acting that way. Right. So so that is that part. So one of the reasons why we've founded Common Sense Africa podcast is actually to create a platform for all people of African descent to come together, to connect and build Africa for all Africans, including Africans in the diaspora. Because Africans in the continent or from the continent should work better with the Africans, Americans, or Africans all over the world, in diaspora all over the world. You talked about the citizenship thing. So I believe that Africans in the diaspora, wherever they are, whether they are Africans in China, Africans in the Caribbean, or whatever, if they can do their DNA, and it gives a certain percentage, to any part of Africa, that country should give them automatic citizenship if they so desire. And then every one of them, all Africans should now begin to make contributions to Africa, and if they,
you mentioned the AU. The AU needs funding. The AU cannot fully operate because a lot of the member states cannot pay their dues.
That's right.
And so the AU cannot fully function. You have ECOWAS, which is the economic states
Community of African West African countries.
And so you have these subdivisions of the AU in different regions, in the four regions. And when you imagine just exactly what you said, African Americans doing a DNA, tracing their lineage to different countries, those countries should be responsible for taking them in.
Right. Just give them,
and inviting them to be a part of the economy.
And have an area, find an area, keep it, maybe even if it's a plot of land, to a family that come back to Africa, and then you give them free. You don't charge them for the land. Secure the place and put necessary amenities around there. Because the good thing about that is all these Africans in the diaspora come back to Africa. They come in with experience. They come in with resources. They come in with, with knowledge. And Africa can benefit from all that. So I think there should be some type of movement to get all Africans reconnected, because here you have African Americans accusing Africans that they don't like them. And you have the Africans accusing African Americans that they don't like them. But because the system is designed to divide them.
Right. So we're aware, we can change
exactly. Now that we have the knowledge of that, we're educated, we should now work towards the solution. We should now work towards, working, getting a better relationship with each other. That way we all can build Africa. I mean, the pride of a black man, or the respect of a black man is in the success of Africa. If Africa succeeds today, African Americans or African descendants, wherever they are, will no longer be disrespected. Things like racial profiling, racism, and all against Africa will be reduced. So if Africans, even what is happening now, for instance, the war between Russia and Ukraine, you see instances where blacks or people with dark skin are being torn down from entering the train to get to safety and all that stuff, So if those people, if they had a place in Africa that they could go to, they will go straight there. They will not be going to the neighboring countries in Europe and be subjected to racism and all those things. So there's that need for every African African descendant to join together to begin to work together. So what are your recommendations? How do you think Africans or African countries can come together for a better relationship?
Well, we have to really tackle the issues from across the board. We have to hold our leadership accountable. Because like you said, if our leadership, if our governments are creating an environment that's conducive for our people, they will return. And once they return, as long as they have infrastructure, they have development, they have, look, it's not everybody gonna leave the Western world to go back to Africa to bathe out of a bucket or live in a house where there's no electricity.
That's right.
And so we gotta have at least the basics. So we gotta compel our government, if we really want our brothers and sisters to come back home or to leave those areas where they're not being treated well, we have got to, our government's gotta do better.
That's right.
And we, the people, have to start selecting good leadership. We can't just elect someone because they entertain us,
Right.
or because they're good at juggling football,
Right.
or because they're good at talking. We have to go beyond what the person can do in a temporary space and look at the long-term policy pieces and plans for the nation, especially with regards to development. Because until we can develop African nations, the people who have doctorate degrees, and those degrees that we need, master's degrees, they are never going to come home. They're going to keep serving the Western world where they have the development that they want and a comfortable lifestyle. They're going to keep giving their talents to those countries. And so I think we the people who are on the ground, we have got to do better in electing the right leadership. Right. And I think Africa has the potential. Look, you mentioned earlier during the interview, why would I leave the Western world to go home? My umbilical cord is buried in Africa. This is where I was born, and this is where I'm going to be laid down at the end of my life. And so in between, my goal is to create enough young people, educated young people. From my school project, we have a few students in Notre Dame University. We took orphans and abandoned children left behind on the streets, and we put them through school. We fed them, we clothed them, we housed them. And today those young people are going to Notre Dame University. This is a big thing for us. And the next phase of the education project we're doing is to create a STEM program to get young people involved in technology, because technology is the future. We have 1.3 billion people living on the African continent, 55 countries, all independent nations. They're not one nation that is under colonial rule. We're under our own leadership today. Right. We're independent nations. And so if an individual can invest that much resources into educating young people, it can be done. Our nations, our government, if they have the right intentions, can educate thousands of young people to go to MIT, to go to Notre Dame, to go to Harvard and Yale. But it will take a government intention, political will, right, to do that, to put in strong policies around education, right, to make sure we have food security in our nations, our borders are protected. And so these are things that will take political will to implement and see to it that young people are not left behind. But we're pushing every citizen of our countries forward. Right. We're creating jobs, yes, by bringing in foreign development partners to create jobs so our men and our women who are well capable and able to work and provide for their families to have a middle class or upper middle class lifestyle. These things are doable. Africa, I always say, is a mecca for the investment world. Right. Everything the world needs to survive is in Africa. But we don't have good negotiators. That's right. This is a big problem we have. And if we can create a solution around that problem, right, you will see a united Africa. Yes. You will see a united Africa, not just to provide for blacks across the world, but to provide for the world. Yes. Because we're not selfish people. Yes. So many countries in the world have fed off the breast of Africa. Yes. Now the Chinese are coming to feed off the breast of Africa. The Europeans have fed off the breast of Africa. They've built Europe and the Western world from the breast of Africa. Right. And Africa will breastfeed everyone because this is where civilization began. Yes. And this is where it's going to end. That's right. And so we, the Africans, have to be careful. If we don't have as the American term will be, if we don't have our shit together, the merchant ships are going to come back looking for resources to survive, right, to suck off the breast of Mother Africa, and they're going to push us off to the side again, enslave us again, right, and they will get all the breast milk, and we'll be left starving. Exactly. So today, for me, it's now we have to hold our governments accountable, right, to see to it that there's enough breast milk to share around.
Well, it's interesting that you talked about that. Africa being the breast milk of the world. So gone are the days that we Africans will blame the colonialists. Like you said, with all the countries of Africa are independent now, mm-hmm, so they are running their own show, or should be running their own show. So it's no longer enough to say that African countries are third world countries, because it's now beyond that. Mm-hmm. So they are vulnerable countries. So now, in my book, there are vulnerable and invulnerable countries. Yeah. Vulnerable countries are those that just sit there, that people dictate to them how to run their economy, how to do this, where to keep their money, and stuff like that. While the invulnerable countries are the ones that are solid, the ones that dictate, like America, like Great Britain, like EU countries, China, and all that. They are invulnerable. And every country is now aspiring to be invulnerable. So because when you're invulnerable, you can run your own stuff.
That's right.
But when you're vulnerable, you can't even speak. You don't even have a mouth to speak. You are afraid to speak because if you speak, you're invulnerable. They're going to come after you. Look at what is happening to, I'm going to use what we're experiencing now, Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine is vulnerable because Ukraine is not a member of NATO.
Correct.
It's close to Russia. It's not friendly with Russia. So Russia, being an invulnerable country, does not want to be vulnerable by letting or allowing Ukraine to join NATO, because that brings America closer. That brings the NATO forces close to America. So that's that infighting. Now, where does that leave Africa? Because I'm only concerned about Africa. Are African countries learning this? Imagine if it was an African country that Russia invaded. Who would come to Africa for Africa's aid? Africa is not in alliance with anybody, not the AU, not NATO, and United Nations is is dysfunctional, So Africa has to do better. African countries must come together, must be connected, must form their own alliance, and to support each other.
That's right. That's right. And also, it has a lot to do with economics.
Yes.
You talk about vulnerable and invulnerable countries. When those who take care of themselves make decisions.
That's right.
And so when you have countries that have not figured out their own economy and how to run it and how to grow it, they're not going to be able to make a decision anywhere. Now, if Africa stopped being for a moment, you see, the Westerners are coming to negotiate for their countries, and the American government will tell you, look, when we come to your country, we're here to negotiate on behalf of America. We come to seek America's interest. They tell you, they tell you America is not a charity. We're not here to take care of your country. We're here to seek out American interests. And they're honest about what they want from you. Now, you have many African countries who are still not negotiating well on the negotiating table. They're still running or selling our natural resources in a raw form. So they're raw material dealers. And that's a problem. We need to process our natural resources in multiple stages, be able to make enough resources that stays within our country before it goes out. The Westerners are coming and saying, look, I want iron ore. They dig it out of the ground, they give it to them. Now imagine if that same country had a processing. That's right. Put their people to work. Create jobs. And process those iron ore into different steels and add value before it's sold. Why aren't we seeing this?
There you go. That's what I'm talking about, because Africans are not talking to each other.
That's exactly right.
If maybe Africa needs to do what China did many years ago, shut the borders, have only Africans, let Africans talk to each other. Madam Cooper, I think we have a lot to talk about.
Absolutely.
So we're going to have a sequel to this. But before we go, I wanted to just talk to our followers, our audience, how to support the Macdella Cooper Foundation, so that you can continue to do your work.
Sure.
So tell us if our viewers, our followers that are listening, if somebody wants to support you, how can they support you?
Wonderful. Well, we have a couple of things happening. We have the Macdella Cooper Foundation, which you can go online and look up MacDellaCooperFoundation.org, or we're on social media on Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. It's all under Macdella Cooper, and the different variations will come up: the political party, the foundation. We also, we have the Movement for One Liberia, which is the first political party in the country that gives women a platform to appear to be, to just be a part of the political process, and disabled people as well as other minorities. And so we are here just to uplift Africa. Of course, we operate from Liberia, but our base is in Liberia because it's such a small country. and we can really help to move the country forward, because Liberia is such a, I go to Nigeria and I love Nigeria. I love everything there is about Nigeria. The food, the culture, the attitude of the people, the attitude of this a la grande. Everything has to be big and beautiful, and it's just that warm welcome. I love that. And Nigerians have the tendency to want big things and success, and to go out in the world and see successful things, and then bring it back home to Nigeria. I want to see Liberians, sort of have that same attitude towards the world, because that's why Nigerians are so successful everywhere to go, and other countries too in Africa. Now, so if anyone want to get involved with us, look for the foundation online, MacDellaCooperFoundation.org. We have our office. There's MacDellaCooper.com. It's my office. The numbers and email addresses are on there. We'll be happy to talk to anyone, see how we can partner up, because the future of Africa belongs to creative collaborators. We have got to stop working in silos, and we've got to combine forces and efforts, put our finances together, and stop having this fear that this person is going to take me down, we have to work together for a better Africa.
Thank you very much, Macdella Cooper, for joining us. And for our viewers and followers, if you heard it, please share with your friends, your colleagues, and everybody. And please do support Macdella Cooper Foundation. God bless you and have a good evening. Thank you.